Welcome to Engaging ESG, where we consider, challenge, and celebrate the evolving world of environmental, social, and governance communications, all in an increasingly complex landscape. I'm Jennifer Owens, marketing executive and consultant.
And I'm Kati Callens, Global Head of Sustainability at Adobe. For Season 4, we're once again talking with climate leaders who are shaping the present and future of sustainability messaging. From connecting with stakeholders to crafting compelling impact stories, we're uncovering the strategies that worked and learning from those that didn't.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or new to the field, you'll find practical tips and insights in every episode.
And whether you're working on your first sustainability report or reimagining your organization's climate narrative, these conversations will help you navigate the complexities of ESG communications. Let's get started. Hey, Jen.
Hey, hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Really good. I am really excited to dive right in because we have a superstar, a fellow Meta mate. God, I hated Meta mate, but Meta amigo. I'm going to pass to you to do the honors.
Yes, we have a stacked East Coast roster today, as our guest is also joining us from New York, where Jen is based, and has probably been to more New York Climate Weeks than I can count. Definitely a master networker and also navigator of the subway. We are thrilled to welcome Amanda Gardiner today to Engaging ESG, Executive Director of the UN Global Compact Network, and a leader who has shaped sustainability strategy from the United Nations to Fortune 500s and global tech. Amanda has integrated ESG into the core of companies like Meta, Verizon, Pearson, and now leads one of the most influential corporate sustainability networks in the world. Welcome, Amanda.
Oh, thank you. That was so weird. It's always very odd to hear about yourself when somebody introduces you. So thank you. That's a very nice introduction. I appreciate it. And it's lovely to be with both of you here today.
We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, it's such a treat. And for those of us who worked with us at Meta, I think it's worth mentioning at the top that, Amanda, you are a very special guest because you have the honor of being the only Engaging ESG guest that has managed both Jen and me at the same time. So our first question has to be, how awesome was that? And as follow-up, how long did it take to recover the loss of us?
That was the biggest challenge of my career. I regard it as the biggest challenge of my career. No, it was wonderful. Would say it's been really tough, but I am very fortunate in that we stay in touch and we have many opportunities to connect at various events throughout the country. Here in New York, when I run into Jen, for example, and also in opportunities like this, where we continue to stay connected and involve each other in each other's things where it makes sense and it works. So I'm very fortunate that we get to stay connected in that way.
Good answer.
Definitely.
Well, now that we've gotten the platitudes out of the way, so I want to dive into ESG because your career has expanded you've got all the corporate responsibility roles, and now the UN Global Compact Network USA, which is 1,000 companies. I think you're going to tell us. I would love to know what it is that it does, what you're working on, and kind of set the stage of where are you right now?
Yeah, so great questions. And I'm going to answer all those questions. But before I forget, I want to ask you all a question at the end, which is, especially today, your podcast, Engaging ESG, I'd love to know why you've kept the ESG and why you still talk about it in that way. So I want to come back to that and before I forget. But
already turning this into a performance review, giving us questions back.
Never. I would never do that. But yeah, the UN Global Compact USA. So I joined Network USA in June after leaving Meta. I've been here about 6-7 months now. It's been an incredible journey, I would say, over the last 6 months, getting settled in. Essentially, if you don't know, the UN Global Compact is the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, and it brings companies together with other stakeholders to really integrate universal principles on human rights, labor, the environment, and anti-corruption into business strategy and operations. And so the UN Global Compact itself is in 160 plus countries and has 20,000 participants across various industries. Network USA is essentially the US arm of that. So here in the US, we're just over, as you said, 1,000 companies. And we're really working with those companies, which are headquartered for the most part in the US, to think about how these principles apply in the US context. And so I'm fortunate, having had a career inside companies doing sustainability, that I get to continue to work with sustainability professionals inside companies, understand their challenges, and help them find solutions and scale those solutions. So that's what I do every day. It's exciting.
And then your team puts on amazing trivia nights that personally I crush. So there's that. I came in second, my team. Thank you very much. That's the most important thing that you guys are working on, I'm sure.
We do. Actually, it is, you say that, and Jess, those are super fun events. And it's
very fun.
Part of what we're trying to try out and do this year, which is try new formats, find new ways of keeping people excited and engaged about this agenda, bringing more people in, especially young professionals, young people who might not be inside of sustainability teams, and giving them opportunities to connect. So they're really important parts of that.
It is. And I'll tell you one added benefit, other than like bringing strangers together who have to work together, which immediately makes you connect. But it's also reminding us how broad sustainability truly is, because you really do come in it like, I am just carbon markets, I am whatever. And then all the questions you start asking really kind of blows your mind a bit. So kudos to
and
your
I
team.
realized that at our own trivia night, when my table, which was full of all of the, I will call them seasoned sustainability professionals, but what was really the old people. And we thought we were going to crush it. And our table came dead last both times that we did trivia nights that I was a part of. So anyway, you realize how much there is in this agenda and how many incredibly knowledgeable people are part of our profession.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to start preparing now, because hopefully there'll be a trivia in San Francisco for SF Climate Week. I don't know what, but I'm going to be ready to bring my A game, because Jen has gotten second. So clearly engaging ESG is on the board. But circling back to the overview of the UN Global Compact Network, I think one of the things, Amanda, that you mentioned that I want to dive into a little bit is, I do think with these types of networks, it can be really hard to manage a consortium of companies if you have not been that person inside the company.
Yeah.
In previous episodes, I've talked about how I've had the benefit of working with nonprofits and government and business. And I think that more cross-sector experience in this space that is so diversified is not only helpful for expertise, but also as like an empathy exercise, right? Because you've been in the companies, knowing how hard it is to work on that. And so I did want to take a moment to wind back time a little bit and talk about when you joined Meta, because I had already been at the company for a couple of years and there wasn't a team dedicated to ESG. And you came in guns blazing, that East Coast and like ingenuity and very blunt, which doesn't always go well in a West Coast culture, but you thread the needle quite well. But I think in particular, you came in and you said something that I had never noticed, which was we were doing something called a materiality assessment, but it actually was just focused on the E, which is the environmental world. And because we were on the sustainability team, I was like, well, but of course, these are the most important parts of the materiality assessment. And you, with your expertise at other companies and also in government agencies and such, were like, oh no, there's the S and the G, folks. And actually, we don't have a lot of legitimacy if we're just focusing on this one thing. And so I wanted to hear from you about the process of integrating ESG strategy and reporting at a big tech giant like Meta, and kind of some things that you've learned that maybe you're now also bringing into your work.
And look, it's not that the S and the G weren't going on at Meta.
Right.
Quite the opposite, in abundance, really. But it's interesting coming into a tech company. And I had worked at other companies that would probably characterize themselves partly, at least, as tech companies. I'd been in telecommunications. I'd been in an education company that was trying to become more tech savvy. But coming into a social media company in tech was a real eye-opener, because it was very decentralized. And so the team that I came into was happening in a really big way with a lot of budget behind it, but was happening in a part of the company. The S was happening kind of a little bit all over the place, and the G was happening somewhere else. And it was at least my observation was coming in, that it was a very rare occasion when all of those aspects would intersect or interrelate, even talk to each other. And so coming from where I had and having been in this space for a long time, thinking about that a little bit more holistically was something I wanted to bring to the company because I thought it would add a lot more value. And not only just add value to the company, but also add value to what we were trying to do in an environmental team, which is where I started in the company. If you can bring the ES and G together in ways that add value to what you're doing on the E side, I think that's a value unlock, right? It was interesting coming in because Meta and probably many, many tech companies are incredibly decentralized. And that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of leeway to kind of innovate and create things at different levels of the organization. And that's part of how things just get done and how innovation happens. But what made it really surprising for me was that no one was really asking for a holistic strategy across the ESG piece. They were just kind of doing things.
Right. What a surprise you would even bring this up.
Right. And that was very different from where I'd been before, where companies were always saying, well, you asked to do something in ESG and they'd say, well, what's your strategy? So it was kind of the opposite. No one was really asking for a strategy. And sometimes it felt like no one wanted one, frankly.
Yeah.
It was a lot more about let's pilot, let's create, let's try things. So I felt a little bit of resistance, whether rightly or wrongly, and whether that was real or not or imagined. But it was definitely a piece I had to think through. How do we kind of get past that and reach out to teams that we haven't been reaching out to before and get past but that's not your job conversation.
Right. Right. And where did the materiality end up? Because that had already happened when I showed up. And I had come from the diversity space. So to me, everything was brand new and exciting in sustainability. So the element of trust, like what was brought forward in all of that work?
So you mean like how did I build that trust? I think everybody in sustainability approaches this piece differently. Obviously, if you want to influence change, make change, you have to build trust with the people that are in charge of making
each
that
component. Right.
So I came from the international development world. I studied foreign service, which essentially translates as diplomacy. And that's really had a big influence in the way that I come to the table, in that I try to make sure before I even reach out to somebody that I understand the context that they're operating in. Context matters a lot. So what are the challenges that they're facing on a day-to-day basis? What keeps them up at night? What worries them? What are they trying to build? What do they want to be known for? So like really understanding that about the stakeholders that you have to build trust with, and then going into conversations in the know, it was really important to me. Building an understanding of the business. So just at a very high level, I mean, Katie, you might remember that part of the materiality, I've lost sense of the order of operations and how we did these things. But part of the materiality process was mapping out the value chain. And part of the reason I wanted to do that is because it's very difficult to understand the business if you can't see it clearly as a whole and then figure out where the influence points are. So doing that helped me understand the business. It brought everybody on the same page about how I understand the business, we understand the business. And then that is a real enabler of conversation about where are the pain points. And so understanding the business in that way is really important. And then I think obviously relationships are critical. So figuring out how to connect people by understanding them, but also then finding ways to connect with them personally, understanding who they are as people, what motivates them and drives them. I bring that to the conversations and the relationships that I'm building. And then I guess I would say the other big piece of that is just patience. So if I were constantly, or any CSO or equivalent was constantly pushing an agenda, that would rub people the wrong way.
Right.
And the reality is that real change is going to take time. Building the consensus that you need for that change takes a lot of time. And so just being patient with people and with myself and with the team about that, and the fact that timelines change. Those timelines are very much out of your control. And so learning to kind of, yes, read tea leaves about at least to the best of your ability, about where things are headed, where the company is going, what the priorities might be, but also not get too caught up in the perfect solution, because you're going to have to pivot very, very quickly when it doesn't make sense all of a sudden, is a big part of how I think the work needs to get done.
Right. No, that all makes sense. And I think bridging some of this conversation to talk not only about your time at Meta and Verizon, but also now your work that it's doing with the UN Global Compact. I think something that I remember hearing you repeat a lot in those early meetings that has stuck with me is you will not get credit for the good things you are doing if you cannot demonstrate that you are doing no harm. That is the table stakes. And I think one of the biggest things I got out of the first big materiality assessment that you and I led at Meta was trust was a really big issue with our stakeholders. And so it didn't matter if we had the most innovative climate program known to man, if people thought that we as a company were not doing good. And that's something that I've continued to think about around this topic of reputation and this topic of like, how do companies prioritize what they're investing in this very volatile moment, especially in terms of regulations? And I do think like, if you haven't won over people to feel comfortable and excited using your tools, then some of that you just lose. And it feels very like kind of basic business principles, but also so vital in terms of this broader framework.
Yeah. And you're reminding me, I mean, oh, how the times have changed, right? Like I came into Meta in the middle of a pandemic in 2020.
Yeah.
Social media was how people were communicating. It was such a big piece. And people were on Facebook, Instagram every day. They still are, but they were using these platforms and not always for good, right? Not always for good, rightly, or whether that was the responsibility of the company or not was a big question. And so to be focusing on the E without taking care of or considering that set of issues, not that it wasn't being considered, but without communicating that coherently as part of an ESG strategy, I think was something that was very much on my mind. And when I say, oh, how the times have changed, I think it's totally changed because AI has exploded. And now all of a sudden, the E and what it takes to power a data center and how much care the company needs to be taking in that space, in terms of what the assessment of ESG priorities would have looked like in 2020 and what it looks like now, totally different balance.
Right.
It doesn't mean that anything has gone away or isn't important, but the way the optics for the customers and the way tackling some of these issues is going to enable the company to build trust is completely different. So it's just fascinating. That's why I love the work.
Well, and now in your role, you bring all of that in, and then it expands. It's immediately expanding because you're talking to all these companies, and your goal is to mobilize them around working around the principles. So what's that bridge? What's that bridge for you? You know, like when you turn to look from one company's many myriad issues into myriad companies' myriad issues.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's one of the reasons why I took the role, right?
Yeah.
It's the difference between at a company like Meta, the reason I took that role is because it's an incredible company with vast scale and the opportunity there to make an impact is huge. But now I'm in a role where working with many companies, the opportunity to make an even bigger impact is there. And so what are those opportunities and how do you innovate them, encourage them, get companies excited about them is all part of my role now. And I think the reality is that sustainability challenges, whether we're talking about ES or G challenges, broadly, environmental, social, or governance, are just too big for any one company to solve alone. And so in this role, it's all about bringing companies together to learn from each other and to understand those challenges from different points of view, kind of co-create solutions, or at least talk about possible solutions and bring those back to their respective companies. And then in some cases, work on solutions together, because I think especially now in the context that we're operating in here in the United States, companies today especially are much more willing to act when they know that their peers are moving as well and acting
in
as
concert.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we provide a bit of a platform for that to happen and a little bit of air cover. So especially in polarized environments, the collective action, the collective commitment, or the collective kind of movement really reduces that perception that any one company is going it alone. So that is something that we're able to bring. I think we're also able to bring some scale where we can pool resources when companies are wanting to do that and kind of make the initiatives that are important to companies kind of more scalable, more durable, more economically viable, you name it. So that's the promise and the opportunity in front of Network USA. And that's why I'm excited to be here.
So this episode is going to air in spring of 2026. So right now we're still looking ahead at like, what is the year ahead? When you think about collective action, when you think about kind of one realm in which bringing together organizations to move the needle on some of these goals, is there any that in particular that come to mind that you feel really excited about or personally invested in?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And I think one of the things that is unique about the Global Compact is the sheer number of companies involved and the breadth of industries, sectors, issues, where a principles-led initiative, and those principles are pretty, I don't want to say broad, but they're around human rights, labor, anti-corruption. And we do a lot of programming that companies love around those issues. I am excited over the next year or so, though, to really think about where to and how to meet companies where they are today. So it's incredibly important that we keep working on how we implement these principles. It's also incredibly important to understand that we're operating in a different moment with lots of different complexities and pressures coming from governments, regulatory pressures, all sorts of different pressures. And, CSOs are struggling. Some of them are really trying to figure out how do they pivot and make things work, often operating with reduced budgets right now, often thinking about how to do things a little bit differently, maybe with less than they had before, whether that's less trust, less leadership support, less budget. So I would really like us to kind of meet companies where they are and show up in a big way by providing some community for those companies to have conversations about what's top of mind right now. Yes, the big issues like the human rights and the environmental issues, climate change, but also like, how do I run a team that's just been cut in half and achieve the same impact? Or how do I make the case to my business leaders that we need to continue doing this when the entire leadership team has just been culled and we've got a whole new leadership team that doesn't believe in this stuff historically? Or how do I respond to all these regulatory changes, even if I don't have to report under that jurisdiction? How is that going to impact me if all these other companies are eventually? What do I do about that? So those are all kind of very specific challenges of today. And I'm hopeful and looking forward to Network USA being able to convene smaller groups of companies around those challenges and build community so that people feel comfortable talking about how they're managing them.
Right. Well, and we started this conversation with you asking us about ESG, like, why do we keep it? And so I say to you, like, because our listeners, we're all about communications and marketing and content and how we're talking about policy. What do you hear about the terms around how you're talking about this, how your members are, it's the green hushing and because I have literally heard CSOs say, well, maybe we just do the work and we don't say anything. And I don't know, what's the comms lesson that we should be thinking about right now?
Oh, I think the comms lesson is language matters, even if we wish it didn't. Language matters. I don't hear, and the reason I asked the question at the top about maybe the question should have been, have you considered changing the name of your podcast? But the reason I asked a question about it is because I don't hear ESG being used as much anymore. I personally liked it because as a professional in this space, it's very easy shorthand.
It's elegant. That's why I like it. It's elegant.
Easy shorthand. Yeah. It stands for a much longer thing that doesn't roll off the tongue. But I think that's also the challenge with the acronym. I mean, I know it as environmental social governance, you know what is environmental social governance. The common person does not. And so it doesn't really serve us anymore. And I think it's not served us in explaining it to the broader.
Oh, and I think also it's been taken over by climate, right? It's like ESG is really about sustainability. It's not as much about, maybe there's a climate justice aspect to it, but DE&I is fighting its own battle, but that's really the S.
Yes. Everyone has a different interpretation of what the acronym means. And so therefore it means nothing, unfortunately, because it can mean anything. And then we have the challenge of it being politicized in some contexts. And so nobody loves that. And it's hard. So I am seeing a step away from that. Sustainability seems to survive for sure. New and exciting terms have come into play.
Oh, tell us.
Sorts. Everyone likes to talk about, in fact, I even just used it in my own LinkedIn post.
Resilience.
Resilience. My gosh, thank you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Risk and resilience, right? It's all risk and resilience.
I'll play devil's advocate. Yeah, responsible business. I think responsible business is probably the best one that I've heard. I'll play devil's advocate to say ESG is not dead. I think that it is not a great term for reaching consumers. And probably not a great term for reaching your executive suite. But at the end of the day, sustainability, resilience, all of these terms do exactly what, to bring it back, the Meta team was doing. They were just focusing on the E of the S and the G. And I think sustainability, while it's like an understood and a term that's continuing to live on, as you well know from all your work in Europe, sustainability means something very different out there.
It's really good point.
Social impact, inclusion.
I grew up in the European, I grew up in doing this work, starting this work in first France, then the UK, and sustainability was ESG. It just was. It was all of those issues in one. It's really very unique that in the United States, sustainability really only is about the environmental agenda, or is that way in any case.
So I think like the need to translate to different markets and audiences and global contexts, that's always going to be something that's keeping us in business, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think I have not seen a term, and maybe until responsible business, but I also think like even the concept of responsibility and accountability is incredibly subjective. And in our current political environment, so I think we haven't come up with something better.
Right.
If anyone listening is like, hey guys, here's what we think you should rename your podcast for season 5, we are all ears. But I do think it's like not the best. It's also not the worst. But I do think ESG as a term is going to continue to be useful, especially for inside baseball, for folks who are doing this work. And that is primarily who we're talking to. But there's always opportunities to kind of reinvent and rebrand, as we all know.
Yeah. I would say the other thing that I think is interesting that we're seeing the revival of is the business case, that phrase, the business case. We need to make the business case, as if nobody's been doing that all along.
Right. I'm so offended by it. I got to tell you. And I spent 10 years in diversity work where it was always about the business case. And then the minute times got tough, out the window, like it didn't work. And so I'm very concerned when it's like, well, the business case will save sustainability. And I'm like, oh, I'm here to tell you, ask your S sisters, because it didn't,
Yeah. I mean, it kind of undermines, it depends on how someone's using it, but it can undermine us as a profession, right? Like as if, or if, it implies that there wasn't a strong business case to begin with, or we weren't making that case.
We're just a cost center.
Cost center. And I don't think that's what's happened. I think we've gotten much better at articulating the business case. But I think ESG, to bring it back to the acronym, has always been about, when done well, risk mitigation, innovation, relationships with stakeholders, and listening,
brand reputation,
how we serve them.
All of that.
Yeah. So all of those things. And those are the things that are contributing to kind of disciplined, solid, successful business management. So yeah, I'll get off my high horse now about business.
Yeah. Maybe that's what we'll rename it. High horse. I'm just noodling with
I don't
it.
know about that, Jen.
Yeah, we can see if we can get the Casey Musgrave song as our theme song.
Okay.
Okay, so ending things on a fun note, as we always want to do, we wanted to ask you, Amanda, this work can be intense. And how do you stay grounded when you're steering dialogue at the intersection of business, climate, and global development? Maybe share something that's on your bookshelf, screen, or playlist, anything that's inspiring you we like to end on.
Okay, I will tell you. So a few things. Okay, I'll say the easy ones first. Number one is pickleball.
Yes.
So I'm a big
You love pickleball. I forgot about that.
And it was at Meta that I fell in love with pickleball. One of our team members introduced me to it. And I was like, pickleball, what's that? Well, I play a lot of pickleball. And I am too embarrassed to tell you how many times a week I play it, but it's a lot. And it's my exercise and it's my social community now. And I love it. And it's totally away from work. Nobody knows what I do when I'm in my pickleball mode. So it's great. I use that to totally disconnect. I think the second thing I would mention is I am a backup singer in a band, in a rock band. So I love that. And that is also like a whole different community that you can get lost in, really. So I enjoy gigging and I enjoy practicing with my band and meeting all the other musicians, etc. That's super fun. I am part of a book group, but I really do have to force myself to read fiction, which is why I'm in the book group. So I'm not going to lie and tell you that I've got a lot of exciting things that on the fiction shelf that keep me inspired. I'm starting to watch more kind of fantasy shows. So I'm watching Pluribus right now, which is Pluribus. Is that what it's called? Very interesting sci-fi kind of thing. And I don't know if you all have seen Sinners, which is up for many awards for last year, but definitely recommend that. I actually loved it. I think I'm not giving anything away by saying it's a vampire movie, but totally not normally my thing. So I'm trying to push myself in that. And then I will also finally, and then I'll be quiet, say I do have a senior in high school who's in the midst of, he's applied for college and now we're waiting. So over the last year,
that'll keep you busy. Yeah.
Oh God. So I see the end. The end is in sight, but over the course of the last year, I've kind of grown really fond of college podcasts. So I listen to those and they kind of calm me down for some reason. So that's my
I love it.
So my tricks, my tips and tricks.
Those are great. I haven't seen Sinners, but I know the soundtrack is great. So that also makes sense for the music interlude of the band that you're in.
I have to tell you the story, which may take us way too long, but I'll try to be short. But I'm watching Pluribus, which is this weird sci-fi kind of thing. And without giving anything away, people fall down randomly at the beginning of this show because they're being taken over or something's happening to their bodies. And they just kind of tip over. Well, I'm coming out of the train this morning. I come up the stairs and I swear to God, I look to my left and this woman just tips over and falls flat on her face on the cement floor and bangs her face flat out. She ended up I don't know if she broke her nose, but it was bleeding everywhere. I was helping her up. We called the EMTs, whatever. But I, for a very hot moment, thought it was the end of the world. And my TV night was creeping into my real life. It was so bizarre. That's my story.
Wild.
Sustainability related.
Art mimicking life, life mimicking art.
Art mimicking life. You got it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. This was such a fun conversation, getting to go down memory lane and hear about all the important work that you're leading at the UN. Your perspective really helps remind me today that sustainability can be both strategic and also deeply human in how we build community.
Oh, it was so fun to talk to both of you. And as always, I'm looking forward to the next time.
Thank you for joining us on Engaging ESG. Have a question for us to consider or a strategy you'd like us to cover? Email us today at engagingesg@gmail.com.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Engaging ESG today. It helps us grow, and even better, be sure to share the podcast with your favorite sustainability, diversity, or social impact colleague. And until next time, keep engaging.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.